Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm WeiryWriter.
Also joining me is Evgeni.
It's me, Argent.
Not Mario. That's not you. That's not any of your ethnicities.
It's Europe. We're one big family.
Well,
Hanami's family.
Except Jeebus. Hey! Jokes. Also joining me is Grace.
Hi.
You have to say I'm the Gator.
I'm Gator Girl. Sorry.
Great. This week, we're gonna talk about the singers, which are also called the parsh or parshendi.
To all of you ignorant Rosharans out there.
They're the singers. So,
Okay. I think parsh might be actually derogatory.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, so there's a number of different words used for these.
Yes. And I'm going to start off by saying what Eric just said is not entirely correct.
Oh,
Get
okay.
right.
Yes.
We're just starting off.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. So
Welcome to Argument Cast.
Yeah. So the species as a whole refers to itself as the singers.
Yes.
Humans refer to them as the parsh. The parshendi are a subset of that.
Yes. Yes.
They are a nation of singers that refer to themselves as listeners.
Tribe. I think tribe is the more accurate here. Because Brandon has talked about Parshendi or Parsh tribes in the past.
That's true. That is true.
So
But, yeah,
I'd say we'll go with that.
A nationality over
Yeah.
a species.
A
A
subset.
specific group.
Yes.
So all parshendi are singers, not all singers are parshendi.
Yes. And all listeners are singers.
Yes.
Yes.
Parshendi
sing.
and listeners are the same thing.
Same
Yes.
thing.
But call them listeners because that's what they call themselves.
Yes.
And it's not an insulting word. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yes. Indeed.
yeah. And so the listeners broke off from the rest of singerdom a long time ago. And are
singer-dom.
culturally
And-
distinct.
The Parsh men are the singers in slave form.
Yes.
And so why don't we get into just let's do a quick overview of history here.
Stay a while and listen to the history.
You're like really going ham on these voices today.
I like voices. Voices.
Me too.
Anyway, there's also
Canton,
a joke
Canton.
somewhere.
Give me my boombox.
There's a joke somewhere about us doing a podcast and people listening to us, and we are talking about listeners, and they're also listeners. But I haven't
that would be a
figured
good
it out
joke.
yet.
That would be a
Yeah.
great joke if we could like fit that together rather than
Yeah,
just
so
like,
I
giving
am-
them the pieces. Yeah.
I'm
We'll just-
working on it as
We'll just have a running gag throughout the podcast where we each try to slip that joke somewhere in there and it
Yeah.
just keeps failing every time.
And if you're expecting singing from us, that's false because we are
look forward to the end.
I tried
No.
to convince them that we needed to sing the listener rhythms when we read them, but they disagreed.
No.
It's okay. We'll just go off script. Don't worry about it.
We're
Anyway,
dirty,
let's
rotten
talk about the
Ashenites.
history.
Anyway,
Let's talk
history.
about the history.
history of Roshar and the singers and the listeners and the Parsh and the Parshendi and the Parshmen and the Dawn singers.
Yeah.
Wow, they have a lot of names. So way back in the day, like 2 weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
Roshar was a planet created or molded or sculpted by Adonalsium.
I believe
And-
the word Brandon used was grown.
Well, that
Or someone
the
used the
continent
word.
was grown. We know that.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Spent like the first line. Just, like, actually, let's be super pedantic here. Just line one of the history.
Isn't
I love it.
that the point of Shardcast?
Welcome to Shardcast. Welcome to Pedantic Cast,
Welcome to Semantics Cast.
where we argue about every word that basically is Most of the time doesn't matter.
At least it wasn't me this time.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, so a long time ago, Roshar became a thing, and not so long time ago, the singers, or the original singers, the Dawn singers, became a thing. They were, what do we think? Were they created by Adonauseum? Did they kind of evolve?
They were part of Roshar's ecosystem.
They
Right.
existed pre-shattering.
Yes.
Yes, we kind of know that, don't we?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we have
Yes.
a direct quote. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. But they were a thing there, and they were the native species of the planet, and looking at how they fit in the or their descendants fit in the ecosystem with the sprint bonds and the symbiotic relationship between physical beings and cognitive beings, you can see how they fit naturally into that world, as opposed to the humans, who are
Yeah.
not. And so they lived there, in a state that Overlord Jeebus calls the Crab Paradise.
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about with that.
It's
honestly.
that. This is what he's talking about.
Okay.
And they live there. Maybe they created the Dawn cities around that time. Maybe the Dawn cities were created for them via Shardic intervention. But there's a strong argument to be made that the Dawn cities were the Dawn Singer cities.
Yeah.
Way back in the day when they spoke. The
Spock
Live
here.
long and prosper.
Oh, that was okay. When they spoke the Dawn chant back in the dawn of time, when every day began with the dawn.
Everything.
There's a strong theme running here, okay?
Yes.
And
They like the sun.
so they live there for some time in peace, hopefully. And then humans show up. They come from Ashen. They are refugees. And the Dawn Singers take pity on them. Either because they're gods, because the shards, because honor and cultivation insist, as one of the songs, I believe, kind of implies.
Yeah.
Or just because they're nice non-human beings, right? And
And by human beings, we mean not human beings.
I said
He said non-human beings.
Oh, okay. Never mind. This
get
can cut.
better,
Yeah.
listen
Alright.
better.
Okay. Oh, hey, maybe it won't be cut. 'Cause that joke is good.
And hopefully, presumably, they Dawn Singers and humans lived kind of in peace for a while, where the humans were mostly, if not only, in Shinovar, or what would eventually become Shinovar, a land cultivated to fit their
Good
needs.
word.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is also something that the story about the girl who looks up kind of refers to, we believe. Right?
Yeah.
Humans
Yeah, I
being
think
kind
that's
of
fair.
imprisoned, and then she climbs and looks over, and there's storms and light and a whole another world out there, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
And so at some point, somehow, for some reason, the humans go, you know what? That's not kosher anymore. We need more. And
As humans do.
as humans do, then stuff happens. And I don't want to go into that stuff because the order, the sequence of that stuff that happens is not necessarily established
No.
or known to us.
No.
And I don't want to mix history with theories.
Yeah.
But we end up in a point where the cycle of desolations begins. We have some of the Dawn Singers are now beings that would become known as the Fused. Odium is taking control over the entire race, or most of the race. Whether he's also playing the humans at the same time is unknown, but probably because he's odium and he doesn't like stuff.
It's like this weird switching when Honor is then with the humans, but the humans were originally of odium. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the heralds also show up. At some point, the Dawn Singers feel that the Spren, with whom they have coexisted for a long time, they formed symbiotic bonds with. They feel they've been betrayed by the Spren because the Spren now help the humans. Which I always thought refers to the Surge Binders, but Surge Binders don't show up until much later, so who the hell knows what's going on with Ancient Roshar?
I mean, there's a song that basically says, we were betrayed by the Spren, so we went to our gods, but it's like, that can't be the right order of that. Right?
Well,
like,
if you had some of the singers becoming fused, and then the rest of them joining the fused after
sure.
Surge Binding, like as a two-step process, not all of them go to Odium at once.
That would make sense, yeah. I feel like the time period is much longer for that to work.
I mean,
but maybe.
all of this has
it's
to
fun.
have happened over like hundreds of years.
Yeah, like the whole like human expansion being considered like the first desolation, right? Like that's a long time, and then some fused eventually come into being, and there's a switching like that. The first desolation is probably the longest, right? Just because of that.
I think that's a fair
Maybe.
argument to make.
Like, I mean, for a while it wasn't like formally a desolation like the other desolations, right?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I don't think the first desolation was an actual desolation.
Yeah, I mean that's
It was
true.
just a war between
Yeah.
species.
World War, Total War.
Yeah, because I guess Yasna calls it the first desolation, but it's like, you know,
Desolation just basically meaning fight between the
giant war.
singers and humans, a giant continent-wide war between them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sure.
But it doesn't necessarily fit the desolation of the definition of desolation that we are given
Absolutely.
in Oathbringer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
I think we can go with that.
the Fused and the Heralds needed to have existed for that to be a thing. Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
And so we enter the cycle of desolations, and we go through a whole bunch of them. We get to the last desolation, the Aharitiam. 2,000 years later, we get to the False Desolation,
Yeah.
when Baudio Mishram connects with some leftover survivors of
Yeah.
the singers, of the Dawn Singers.
So it's actually pretty interesting because the story of the Last Legion. So in Words of Radiance, Eshonai's talking with her mom, and we hear about the Last Legion, which we really haven't talked about. We haven't heard very much about, really. But these would eventually become the listeners. And they actually threw off their gods. So that needed to happen before the Last Desolation, or like during that time frame. And they broke away. It's very clear if you read that they abandoned their gods.
Yeah.
And so they abandoned those, but at some point later, like about 2,000-ish years ago, the unmade bond of Mishram connected with most singers, not the listeners. So it's not clear.
All
like,
of them
how that
except
worked.
for...
Yeah.
Which explains why the humans thought all singers were gone, turned into parshmen, because they just didn't even know about this pocket that was living off somewhere in under some rock.
Well, I
like-
believe
yeah.
at one point, doesn't Nail say in his insanity, oh, this is just a pocket, an anomaly, and it has happened before that there have been pockets found?
Well, he's talking about pockets of void spren, not pockets of sapient parsh people.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But what happens, so the False Desolation is false because there's no fused, but Baudio Mishram granted forms of power, which we'll talk about in a sec, and Void Light, and the Radiance at the time sought to finally end the war forever by trying to imprison Ba'eda Mishram in a perfect gemstone. Turns out there were some consequences with that.
Just a few.
Whether they were intended or unintended.
Well, they were unintended because
They were absolutely unintended.
Yeah, that was like in the epigraphs, one Shin scholar, I forget her name, but
Kaza, was it Kaza daughter something? I don't know.
Because is a different. No, what I'm saying is, I think some or I don't know if I think that, but I've seen some people who think that not all of the Radiants were as ignorant of the possible consequences as, like for example, what's his face?
Malishi?
The Malishi, yeah. He may have known what was going to happen, and he may have just kept it to himself and gone, well, yeah, we're gonna do this.
I mean, he was,
Yes, there are definitely some interpretations of oaths that would be totally okay with that if it saved human lives.
Well, the
I think
one of the the emeralds there say, "We are uncertain of the effects this will have on the Parsh. At the very least, it should deny them forms of power. Malishi is confident, but Naze daughter Kazuda warns of unintended side effects." So, I feel like Malishi was like thinking that, oh, I can imprison this in gemstones, which we see in Oathbringer. Dalnar can do, so that makes sense that he would like know that that's a thing he can do. But I don't know. I'm not really confident that the Radiants knew that this would happen, especially because it seems like this strike team was pretty small. So
as a whole,
yeah.
I don't think they knew.
Yeah, as a whole, yeah, but like maybe like some of the scholars warned of some hypothetical consequences, but I don't think anyone really knew what would actually happen.
Well, I think to know what would actually happen, you would have to understand Singer's connection to Ba'eda Mishram and each other, which I'm not convinced that they understood.
No.
Hey, if only there was an Order of the Radiants who was expert in connection.
Well, yeah. That's true. Malishi
no, you know,
could know.
Here's why this rubs me off the wrong way. Here's why I'm a little suspicious of Malishi, is because he reminds me of the leader character who goes, "No, I am confident this will work," and he uses that confidence to mask either ulterior motive or lack of confidence.
You know what that kind of reminds me of, Evgeni? Venli talking to the other listeners. No, this will totally work, guys. You should definitely get these Stormform. It'll work out great. You know, like that just kind of reminded me of that. Really, you know?
Sure.
But regardless, Malishi imprisoned Ba'eda Mishram, and turns out when Ba'eda Mishram was connected to all those singers, in doing so, ripped out connection and ripped out a part of their identity, and all except those listeners were lobotomized, basically.
Basically.
Yeah.
And then were known as Parshmen, and then humans
the-
enslaved them because they were good at working.
Yeah. As humans often do.
Great.
And those events were, if not the main, then at least one of the causes for the recreants. As
we've
confirmed
talked about that a
by
few times. Yeah.
one of your favorite podcasters, Argent,
right.
who went to JordanCon and asked Brandon about it, and Brandon was like, "Yeah, man, you're totally right."
Was that
Direct
an Arcana?
citation.
Was that an Arcana, Argent?
Yeah.
About,
I mean, I may have paraphrased, "Yeah, bro, you're totally right," but
Oh, that was one of the causes. Yeah. I kind of forgot that. I've just been convinced that that's been the case. So I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah, it's obvious.
it's something I liked a lot and thought I would confirm.
Yeah, for sure. So that's where it's been for a very long time of them just being around. And also, to go back with what was said a little earlier, that humans wouldn't think that there's any sapient singers still around. Well, like, weren't the listeners like chilling in Natanaton, which was destroyed in the Desolations, right? Like,
Well, we don't
there
know
was
exactly when it was destroyed.
Or how.
It could have been
The-
after the Desolations.
No, Yasna said that it was destroyed.
Yeah, Storm Seat was destroyed during a Heretium,
Yeah,
the last
Okay.
Desolation.
which that could be combined with the many Desolations that were in that time frame, but like around that time.
Mhm.
It could be the last Desolation itself, but at least,
Sure. Okay.
but like around that time.
But the story Eshonai's mother tells her, the story of the Last Legion,
Yeah.
talks about the listeners, well, the Last Legion, and eventually the listeners hiding in, I think, a dark place is what they call it.
The Dark Home.
A dark.
I think.
So I've always read that to be, well, they went underground, literally.
Yeah.
It's probable.
Amia. Tunnels under Amia. No. Not right. It doesn't need to
with
be
all
the
the
case.
shard blades.
That's a joke. That's a joke.
Yeah.
That is a joke. Could be, but underground Amia. Yeah, nailed it. Now that's true. But it like there's also a part that says warriors who had been set to fight in the farthest plains, this place that had once been a nation and was now rubble. Which kind
Yeah.
of refers to Natanaton, in my opinion.
That points at it pretty squarely, doesn't it?
So, like, the order of that is not there. Darkholme could also be, like, metaphorical in that the listeners no longer had access to a lot of these forms, right? And intentionally, like,
Yeah.
more like a metaphorical darkness.
Because
they have
seems
less
like a
knowledge and
stretch to
stuff.
me.
A darkness of the mind because they
Yeah.
entered dull form.
Yeah. That could totally be the case.
I don't buy it.
Metaphorical.
Yeah.
Metaphorical.
I mean, there could be caves under, or some kind of cellar or large room under the ruins.
Cellar.
Ah, yes, the
They went to the
It's the dark home.
basement.
The cellar.
I,
The storm cellar? Okay.
But yeah, one of the old homes there had a basement that they hid out in.
Big basement.
Right, I mean,
Some sort of storage cavern.
Harmony went overboard. Just need more storage caverns. Just give me more.
Yeah. So then, much later, then there's this whole Everstorm thing. That Venli encountered Ulim and discovered Stormspren and gave most of the listeners Stormspren in a desperate fight against the Alethi that they thought it was necessary. Oh, the listeners also should probably talk about this. Listeners, for a long time, very anti the fused, their gods. So this is kind of a big deal for them to like go back to forms of power. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
But then they summoned the Everstorm. And what happened with that Everstorm?
Okay. So the Everstorm, this is still talking. The Everstorm still said, power has filled in the holes in their souls, bridging the gaps. They didn't just wake, Kaladin. They've been healed. Connection refounded. Identity restored. There's more to this than we ever realized. Somehow, when you conquered them, you stole their ability to change forms. You literally ripped off a piece of their souls and locked it away.
Yep. Which the epigraphs tell more about. But
Yeah,
Everstorm
that's
healed
messed
them.
up.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
It sucks. Definitely. 100%. Terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, we should have grabbed.
Still
we should
uses
have
an
grabbed.
interesting phrase in this quote.
Yeah.
Bridging the gaps.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah, I'm sure
Okay.
that's not important.
I don't know if it's relating to what
a
you're
future quote that we're
implying.
going to talk about a little later.
Yeah. But so basically, this is talking about their spirit web.
Yeah.
Like when the Radiance sealed by Domitium, they pretty much took a machete to all of their spirit webs to get Domitium, because Domitium was connected to everyone.
Right.
And it,
So
like
breaking
Yeah.
that off. Yeah.
yeah, it took more than just Domitium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So, it's described that the form that the Parshmen, which the listeners called slave form, were in.
But it's really no form at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's a lack of a form. Sa describes it as living in a fog, knowing deep in your soul that something is profoundly wrong, but not being able to say a single word to stop it.
Yeah, because like the Parshendi, well, the singers have evolved to bond with Spren. Like that is
Yeah.
an intrinsic
Yeah.
part of them.
Yeah.
Not having a Spren is bad.
Yes, very bad. And they just... You could just leave them in the woods and they would just stand there until someone ordered them to do something else. Like something was super profoundly wrong with their souls.
But it's interesting that the children were afflicted by that as well. Like
Yeah, that is
children
really
were
interesting.
like
yeah.
new children are in the same situation. It's like
Well, I guess
Well,
if their parents had that, it's part of their spiritual DNA.
Yeah, that
Passed
that's
down.
true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
I guess.
spiritual DNA is. There's a word of Brandon somewhere on that. It's partially inherited and partially other things, such as
Yeah.
where you are, who you are, and things like that.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
it-
it could easily be explained with, well, that's one of the things they inherit.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Yeah, man, we haven't really gotten too many new quotes on spiritual DNA in a long time, I don't think.
Get on that next week.
So
Yeah.
if anyone going to a con soon, you could ask Brandon if that's because of spiritual DNA.
Well, for the record, spiritual DNA and spirit web are the same thing,
Yeah.
which I believe Argent confirmed at some point.
Doesn't
So-
sound like one of mine, but I can't
Yeah.
keep track of all of them.
But so if
Here's
you
the thing. Or did you have a follow up?
I had to follow up. It's like, so if you see the word spirit web, it's spiritual DNA.
Yeah.
Like they're the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Spirit web has
web is
become
the
more
in
common.
world.
Yeah. Like we're more likely to use spirit web than spiritual DNA at this
Yeah.
point in time.
Yeah.
If we're talking about inheriting something from your parents, DNA is the
yeah, it is.
associated with that.
It's a useful metaphor.
Yeah.
There's something I wanted to bring up because when Ian was talking about Parshmen just being left out in the woods until somebody shows up and tells them to do stuff,
That was Eric.
was it?
Yeah.
White man, you're all the same to me.
Speaking as a white man.
People without beards, you're all the same to me.
There you go. There you go.
It reminded me of God, and I don't even know how it reminded me of that. It made me think of identity. So somehow in my brain, which has not been lobotomized just yet by radiance, I thought
Yet.
Parshmen
Later, though.
Yet. If you listen closely, you might hear the moment. Somehow, my thoughts went from Parshmen. Well, when the Everstorm came, their connection was refounded, and I want to talk
Yeah.
about that refounded connection in a little bit.
Yep.
And their identity was restored. So they were going back. They didn't have a whole lot of identity. And then I somehow jumped to Scadrial and the ability of ferochemists to manipulate their identity, which we still don't know how that works. But if you dump your identity and then store stuff in a metal mine, then other people can access that metal mine, right? Your investiture is unkeyed and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And all of this kind of clicked together as, well, if you don't have identity, you are more susceptible to control, external control, and influence. And if you have a lot of identity, somehow, either by ferrochemically enhancing that or other means, then you are more independent, you are more yourself. And so maybe that's why, the reason I'm saying all of these obvious things, maybe that's why the Parshmen are so ready, susceptible, yeah. So susceptible to influence, to people telling them what to do. Well, it's because they don't have identity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I want to say that there's a word of Brandon out there that if you store your identity, you do become more susceptible to emotional elemency. I think that's a thing.
They do have some identity, though, Evgeni, because as one interesting part about the singers being restored is that Alethi singers act Alethi.
Sure,
And
yeah.
Valen
That
singers
has more to do with connection, I would say.
I mean, so it's not necessarily a magical explanation here. It's you were born and you were raised in a culture, in an environment around people who act a certain way, and in the absence of their own culture, I feel like it only makes sense that the singers, or the beings that would become the singers, would just naturally adapt the speaking patterns and the culture and the mannerisms
I guess
of the people around them.
Ian, you're right though. It would be more connection. We don't have concrete definitions for these things, so it's like there's a little bit of wiggle room. But
They're basically
you're
connecting to a Lethkarness.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree. Yeah, no, because that language, you connect to a thing, right, and then you're able to speak other languages, right?
So this does sort of remind me of Mistwraiths and Kandra, in that there's always like a person there, but the person isn't always a person. Like
It's lobotomized.
Yeah.
Oh, that's totally true. Actually,
It's like they need the spikes in order to function.
No, that's totally right.
But
because-
it's not like if they lose the spikes and then get them back, they're a new person.
Yeah.
Like there is like Melan is always Melan,
There's a core.
whether she has spikes or not. It's
Yeah.
just sometimes she's actual Melan and sometimes she's just a puddle of muscle and goo.
Yeah. It's actually funny because I was also thinking with the whole ripping part of your spirit web off, it's a lot like hemalurgy in a sense, right? You know, with imprisoning behind a Mishram. Like,
it is.
part of your soul was ripped off. That's kind of similar.
And it's not a direct one-to-one parallel.
No, it
because
isn't.
Singers, this was perhaps an unintended side effect of what was going on. Whereas Mistwraiths,
Yeah.
this is by design on Roshek's part. Like,
That's true.
you wanted them to be non-sapient, except for the ones that he wanted to be sapient. Like,
but
so
it is.
there's a blockage there rather than something missing.
I know
Yes,
Brandon
because
has called it a blockage,
Yeah.
but that
Like
was
the
early on.
spikes are required to align the aspects or something.
I feel like that in some respects it could be like it's there, but there's a little gap and you need the spike to fill the gap kind of thing.
Mhm.
So in some sense it's a little similar to that.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Not too much difference between the two.
I think it is similar enough to call it similar, but it's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Intention or lack of thereof, not counting,
Yeah.
notwithstanding.
And it's really interesting. I don't know. I thought reading Oathbringer, some of the coolest stuff was just discovering what these reawakened singers, what was actually going on with them, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, are they gonna all be evil and crazy? Oh man! But then we
Yeah.
realize it's so much more complicated, right? Like that was
Yeah.
so cool just seeing Kaladin discover that.
For lack of
Yeah.
a better word, they are just normal people.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
totally are, and they're just
Yeah.
kind of pissed off about that whole being lobotomized for 2,000 years
And enslaved.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is reasonable.
I'd be mildly upset.
yeah, mildly.
I
Yeah.
might raise my voice. I might file a complaint.
Well, if you're Azish, you definitely file a complaint.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Didn't they did that?
I think
Yes,
they
they
did.
did.
I just love that. That's their reaction was
Yeah.
to file a complaint and request all of their all of the pay that they were owed from all the
Yeah.
work they did.
But like
Oh,
they're
easier.
Azish. Like
Yeah.
Yes.
like it doesn't
cool.
matter that they're parsh people. It's like
Yeah.
they're Azish.
yeah,
That's their culture.
But but they're just really upset that humans took the home that should be rightfully theirs, and
Mhm.
Fused are coming in and telling them what really went on.
Mhm.
Basically,
And I don't think for a lot of them it's even so much their home. It's like Saw says, "Oh yes, they sold my wife and are going
Yeah.
to separate me from my daughter."
Well, the whole thing of slavery
Yeah.
really sucks.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Don't do slavery,
and
kids.
Kaladin does try to have that conversation with like, hey, I was a slave too. And so I was like, yes, but it's not the same. You
You
still
were a
had
tiny
God.
one, man. You were a tiny slave.
You didn't have your soul ripped out and had no way to fight back. Yeah.
And it's like Saw like sort of respects that like Kaladin is trying to empathize with him, but he's just like illustrating this like, I understand what you're trying to do, but it's so much worse than you thought.
I think all this is really cool that Brandon is like, this is what Stormlight has really been about in the background, and now it's in Oathbringer, it's the forefront that there are these two races and the conflicts between them, really.
Yeah.
And it's like it's hard to empathize with the other, right?
Mhm.
That like, yeah, you don't know the pain that I've gone through. you know?
Especially when the other is referred to as the Voidbringers and beings of darkness and
yeah.
all of these extremely objectifying, villainous, or vilifying terms. And then you get to see the other, and it's Sa.
And they're
And
playing
his family.
cards and
Yeah.
arguing about the rules.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they're not bad. I remember reading I'm sorry if this is you, but I remember reading a bad review of Words of Radiance that basically said this race, they're all turned to evil and so cliched, and now you read Oathbringer, it's like, actually, about that, there's kind of, it's a lot more complicated than that, and I like that. I think that's
Yeah.
great.
I remember that review.
Yeah. Yeah, right?
And
It's
like,
like, nope.
even in Words of Radiance, it wasn't that simple because we had Eshonai and
Yeah.
something was interfering with her. That should have made it obvious that, it's not just these people are evil. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
No.
But I love that it is just so complicated. Like this is depth that's important depth, I think,
Yes.
to world building, you know? Oh, we didn't talk about this. How did that whole Everstorm work? Because that's a thing we should talk about.
Yeah, that's the thing that
Mechanically.
happened.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
It's
None.
There's a lot
don't
of
believe that.
Odium's investiture involved.
Yeah.
Like the high storms, they are invested to the hilt and looking for a place to shove it,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I believe is a paraphrasation of Vasher.
Sure is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Well, right, because the Everstorm doesn't have Void Light in it, so like it's kind of weird with the Everstorm. But
So
it is,
Mm.
yeah.
do we think the Everstorm is a moving perpendicularity of Odium?
I don't think it's a perpendicularity
I
any
don't
more
think it's a
than the high
perpendicularity,
storm
yeah.
is a
Yeah, the High
perpendicularity.
Storm's not a perpendicularity.
It's a blurring of the realms, at least.
Sure. That's kind of what I meant. I was
sure.
going to go on and make a distinction that, well, it's not a perpendicularity in the way that the Well of Ascension is, for example, but it's a highly invested
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
quote unquote object.
It's
Welcome
like
to
rather than
Pedantic.
there being a like clear like piercing of the three realms, it's just muddying the water, and it's like
Thinning.
it's all blurring
Yeah.
together, and
thinning.
it's like
And-
not clear.
Perpendicularity is probably one of those things where there might not always be a clear line as to when it stops being, there's a lot of investiture here, and where it starts being, this is a perpendicularity.
Sure.
Like with many
Yeah.
things with shards, what threshold is that to... How many splinters do you need to be considered a shard? Like,
4. That question's gone. Okay.
yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, okay, so the Everstorm, lots of Odium's investiture, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so circling back to what Grace said briefly, if there is a hole that's missing in the parchment, and we know that the hole is not missing, right? There's something missing, and that's a hole. Back during the False Desolation, Badu Mishram was so I'm imagining this visually, right? We have Badu Mishram, and she has
How
those
else would you
lines of connection, kind of reaching into through the spiritual realm into the spirit webs of all the singers back then. And when she got ripped away, the bits where she was connected with the listeners, those were kind of the, okay, external connection goes here bits,
Okay.
which is a little fuzzy. I know it's not hard science, but
Spiritual,
I think it's...
all the spiritual stuff, very fuzzy, so
Yeah.
it's fine.
And so the insert external investiture slots, they're now gone, right?
Yeah.
But I can imagine a world where those holes in the spirit webs of the now Parshmen are easier for external investiture to go into, much like the holes in the budding surge binders spirit webs are easier for spren investiture to get into.
Well,
So
And
basically,
so
cracks
if you-
in the soul.
It's essentially, yeah.
Okay.
And so when you are placed in a position where there's a high concentration of investiture out there, and it happens to be Odium investiture, maybe connection plays into this. Maybe that's why the Parshmen were unable to get healed during high storms, right? Because they are
It
still
needed to be
in...
keyed to like odium stuff.
Sure.
This is related
Yeah.
to Biodemishram.
Yep. Yep.
Or, okay, I have something to say, but I'll let you
Uh,
finish.
yeah.
Okay. And so they are now exposed to this extremely high concentration of Odium's investiture, and by just natural equalizing of the densities, if you will, that investiture from the Everstorm flows into the Parshmen and bridges the gaps in their spirit webs. And now they're healed.
Okay, yeah, I have thoughts
Okay.
on that as well.
So there's a very well-known sequence of words of Brandon which say that the singers are not originally of odium or cultivation, and they're
Yes.
not of honor.
Period.
So what
Yep.
if the reason the High Storm never fixed them is because like they're not keyed to honor's investiture at all?
Sure, they're
So
not
it's like
connected to him.
Well,
But like if cultivation probably could have fixed the Parshmen, because like they
I
are
just had the same thought. Yeah, maybe she could have.
Mm.
Yeah. I buy that.
Well,
Man.
I was thinking that it might be a matter of intention. So, Odium
Who's-
clearly wants the Parshman, wanted the Parshman healed. So his intention in the Everstorm, he could have, like, shoved that along a little bit.
True.
He could have helped. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So,
And-
like, if the question is if the Everstorm, if Odium didn't want the Parshman to be killed, like, I think he could block the Everstorm from doing that while still having the Everstorm.
Yeah. And there's word of Brendan from the 2016 Jordan Con, I believe, where talking about, are, like, all the Parshmen screwed? Like, can a Parshman just, like, reject the Everstorm? And Brendan says, like, it's plausible. Like, just, like, you don't have to be in the Everstorm to be affected by it. Like, if you were separated by a sheet of glass, but you really want to be affected, like, it could happen. I'm gonna go find that because I just butchered that.
Yes. Confirmed. That always gets into the question of the Everstorm being new, but old in design. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's always confused me. Like, it feels like that's very useful for Odium to use, but
Well-
I guess Odium's
Like,
point is
Why would he not do this before? Is
Okay.
a question I keep asking
yeah.
myself.
It could maybe in some way leave him vulnerable that he wasn't willing to risk before. Perhaps.
Like a bridge to Braze or something, or easier access to Braze.
Let's let
Okay.
him talk.
Yes, I did. I found it. So it's not quite as clear as I remembered it. It's like, questioner. A dull form listener is indoors when the Everstorm passes over. Will they be transformed into a void form? Brendan. No, it just depends on the strength of the boundary between them, but it is possible for them, and also being transformed, taking new forms is... There is a measure of will behind it, meaning, for instance, even when Eshonai took the new form, she had herself open to taking a new form. By the time she didn't want to, it was too late. But she had made the decision, even though she's been kind of misled in some ways. If a Parshman were in, even in the Everstorm, and aggressively didn't want this to happen, I'm not saying it won't, but I'm saying there is room for discussion of whether or not they would change there. But also one who does want to, and is, there's only a little pane of glass and things like that, then yeah.
That's also interesting because the question is from 2016, and so pre-Oathbringer is
Yeah.
like, oh, will they be transformed into a void form?
Yeah.
That's not really what happened. And so
I thought of that too.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, sure. There's a measure of will. We can accept that, and
Just
it
wonder
doesn't.
how much-
It doesn't change much.
I just wonder how much will, like, if you were a slave form.
You
Yep.
probably don't
Yeah.
have enough to
yeah.
resist.
Yeah,
Yep.
but like that's again that quote is about like void form and like once you're restored, then
Yeah.
you have to make a choice, right?
Yeah. Or, the Radiants could just soul cast large buildings made of aluminum. Keep all of the singers in there from now on.
Just drop a huge hanger on top of the shattered plains. Just thunk.
What form were these restored singers in?
It varied.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it did vary. Yeah.
It was kind of just a grab bag of whatever spread
Okay.
were around, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's interesting, because not only was the connection refounded, but in that same Everstorm, you would have bonded a friend, right?
Yeah.
Because in order to be restored, like, they needed a spread.
That's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Thinking about that mechanically.
But they're normal spread, they're not
Yeah.
void spread.
I guess I had assumed,
wonder-
and I admit this is super fuzzy to me, but I guess I had assumed that they would be restored to doe form by the Everstorm,
Huh.
and then they can, if there were Spren around, they can transform into, like mate form and work form and nimble form, the same way they would be able to in a high storm. But I didn't think all of them would like automatically get restored to I guess I've been thinking about it as a two-step process, right?
I don't think it was, because they don't know how to change forms. It requires intent. And if you just go in into a high storm, like not really knowing what you're doing, like you end up as dull form most of the time, or some random form.
Right.
Based on your feelings and emotional state and things like that.
You have to have a certain outlook, and a spread has to be around that fits that outlook.
So I wonder if now that the singers are restored, if there's a noticeable drop in the number of Spren on Roshar.
I wouldn't say so. I think they're way, way more Spren than anything else. Plus, the population of the Parshmen cannot be that high, right?
It's
Because
not
they are expensive slaves.
They are expensive.
And like even a rich household wouldn't have. I mean, I don't think we have numbers, but I can't imagine that. Let's say House Kalin has more than a few hundred max, and even that seems like a high roll.
Yeah, it's nowhere even remotely close to 50-50 of the population.
Yeah, nowhere near.
But it's also kind of vague because in like the first book and stuff, we don't see that many Parshmen, really.
Yeah.
And you would imagine if, like, for the Alethi, I would imagine a lot of the Parshmen would actually be in the war camps. Because you need the extra labor there. And that's where the rich people are.
Yeah.
Alternatively, you need them back home because all of the young men of fighting age are occupied.
You can't use Parshmen to what does it have to do with anything?
Well, like, young men of fighting age are usually workers and laborers. Like, if they're gone, their jobs have to be filled.
I can kind of see both your points. It's probably a combination. Like some brought them to the Shatterplanes. Some were like, yeah, we need extra labor because labor's not here. They need
in all honesty, the Parshmen were probably just wherever the rich people are, because the rich people can pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do we think with Odium's investiture restoring the Parshmen that they're there's an effect of having that odious investiture in them? Just wanted to
there
bring
has
that
to be.
up.
Any
I feel like there has to
amount
be.
of investiture affects you.
Yeah.
So, technically, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like these Parshmen are forever tainted by odium. It's like, I don't think it's a meaningful effect.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's I guess it's just
And
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
And Stormlight Archive is all about choice, and I don't think it fits the theme to have, and now because of this thing that was totally out of their control, this entire species is corrupted for the rest of their lives.
I definitely don't think that's going to be the case for sure. But it's getting kind of at that, the singers weren't originally of Odium, and like maybe Odium did changes to that species on like a slight spiritual level, like more than just like the forms of power. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I do think there's a small change, but it's probably on the scope of. I'm thinking hemorrhagy, right?
Sure.
Let's say you are somebody who is spiked a little bit, but not being actively influenced by ruin. So I'm thinking, let's say Spook in book 3, right? There are obviously moments after he gets spiked when quote unquote Kelsier shows up to him and tells him to do things. I'm not thinking of that. I'm thinking of Spook becoming more aggressive, more confident, more proactive in doing things. Which is admittedly, which is admittedly a thing that's kind of happening throughout the entire book. But I wonder if it accelerates because of that additional bit of Ruin's investiture that is now a part of his spirit web.
Possible.
So
Well,
it's
like-
not a huge character
Yeah.
change, but it's a minor, push in some direction.
Tweak. Little tweak.
Yep. Yep.
Like, yeah, like the whole thing of a species being of something, of a
Yeah.
shard is always like super vague. Like even on Scadrial, it's vague, right? Like, the
Yeah.
Khandra were of preservation, and it's like,
Well, like they're
yeah,
all
but-
Yeah.
they're all of both. Like,
yeah,
like
right.
humans are of both. So it's like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are affected by both. But it's like,
yeah,
and that does have an effect, but for the most part, a human on Scadrial and a human on Roshar, like, there's not a meaningful difference there.
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
They're
Yeah.
still human.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I'm with you there on that, but it is just we should probably be worried about lots amount of odious investiture. Like
But,
Well,
like
if-
at some point, like it filled in the gaps of their soul, but it
Yeah.
blew their spirit web. But at a certain point, like that's their investiture. It's no longer odium's. I would
Yeah.
say, like, yes, it's odium's, but
Hmm.
it's
It
a
is now
moot point,
key
really.
to
Yeah.
them.
And if what was taken out originally was what was connected to Ba'ad Mishram, it might just be replacing Odium's investiture. If that was originally Odium's investiture, replacing what was already there, and it doesn't really change the makeup of... Like, they might have enough of other investiture in them that it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
sure.
Just kind of passive, neutral, whatever their magical makeup or investiture makeup was before all of these shenanigans happened.
Yeah.
Well, there's no neutral investiture.
Well,
But yeah, I agree,
right. This
I agree,
goes
I
back
agree.
to like when Brandon was talking about, well, the molecules and the atoms in the Earth, are they of
Yeah,
this star
right, yeah,
or
yeah,
of that star? Technically,
basically balanced, right?
Yeah.
Like more
Yeah.
like a balance.
yeah,
It's returning them to where they were originally.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
How about we talk about forms? You can find all these forms on the Coppermind, on the Singer page and Regal page. Can learn all about them, and we'll talk about all these.
So, for common forms, we have mate form, which is for having
Breeding.
children. Yeah, breeding.
And there's actually a quote that was saying how Brandon was interested in a species that was mostly asexual. You have to be a
Yes.
mate form to mate. So
You,
that's neat.
Okay. War form. Oh, were you gonna say more about mate form?
Yeah, and it's a lot of people are like, "Oh, mate form is like the only form that can have children." So how did the Parshmen survive? And it's like the forms are specializations,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
The other
absolutes.
forms can have children. They just don't want to.
The fact that you are not in war form doesn't mean you can't punch people.
Just because you're asexual doesn't mean you can't breed.
Yeah.
Right? Like
you're just less inclined to.
right.
Yes. Okay. So war form, which is for fighting.
Yep.
Work form, which is described as for strength and care. So it's for doing kind of daily work.
Mhm.
You have nimble form.
A laborer.
Oh, yeah,
laborer.
laborer. Yeah. Nimble form. So that's for delicate activities, I guess.
I
Or
guess
precision
still
and-
works.
Yeah. It's for
Yeah, it's-
precision.
Yeah, like so contrasting a laborer versus
An
not an
artisan.
artisan, but like a weaver
Craftsman.
or
Yeah.
craftsman. Yeah.
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 You have mediation form, which we don't know much about. It's just we have heard it in the Song of Listing. And
Yep.
that is for teaching and consolation.
Mhm.
We have scholar form, which is for patience and thought. This is another one that we've heard of in the Song of Listing.
And they didn't know of scholar form or mediation form with the listeners.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they knew of them. They just didn't know how to
They didn't. Yeah,
get them.
They didn't know how to get that form. Yes, thank you.
And this one I think is interesting because in the song it says, "Beware its ambitions innate."
Yeah, scholar form.
Which is why I think some people have, because that's the form Venli was pursuing, right? She was trying to get to scholar form so she can work on the other forms more easily.
Yeah.
And I've seen some people suggest that scholar form is actually not that different from limbo form,
Yeah.
and she had actually attained scholar form, therefore the ambition, therefore the whole thing with Yulum, etc., etc. Which is not necessarily something I believe in,
Yeah.
but I think because she was trying to get into the mindset of the scholar form, she had grown, or she had explored more of her innate ambition.
Yeah, and Venli is just a very ambitious person.
Yeah. Whereas, I think the danger of scholar form is, scholar forms seek to uncover knowledge, even knowledge that might better left be not known. So it's dangerous. You might figure out something that really shouldn't have become known. Whereas,
it'd be really cool.
Venli is just was not a very nice person. She's getting better, in my opinion.
It'd be really cool.
Well, it'd be cool.
If we get a just super random scholar form person in the various Italians. Just for no reason.
Yeah. Well, we do see a scholar form in Oathbringer, and Venli is not happy because we worked so hard.
Oh yeah,
and these just randos just get it. They just get it given to them.
They're like, yeah, do this,
fair.
this. We know exactly how to do this. Yeah,
it's just a salt.
The salt form.
Salt
Argent
form.
Okay. Yeah. So the next one is art form. And this is the one that they were trying to achieve, in the words of Radiance, by attracting creation spren.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we have dull form. And this is considered sort of the lowest form and the kind of baseline form with not any specific spren, and it's just kind of, I think they said it's similar to slave form, but a little bit more thought and free will.
Yeah.
You're still you. You're just dumb.
Yeah, and those are all of those are all the common forms that we know.
Yep.
Before we move on to the forms of power, do we want to look into Dill form and specifically the bit where it says, because with some of these songs, it talks about how to acquire them, which was, the purpose, the reason the last legion came up with them, right? So they can be their legacy.
Yeah.
And so do we want to talk about how Dill form is, to find this form, one needs banish cost. It finds you and brings you to blight. Because that's weird to me.
That is weird.
Well,
right, because with the other ones, like with art form, we must attract creation spren. These songs suffice till we learn. It's more clear, right?
Well, the one that actually says art form requires cultivation spren is not the song
Creation.
listing.
Yeah, creation spren.
Creation spren. What did I say?
yeah.
You said cultivation spren.
Okay. They both start with C
Yeah, no.
and end with shun.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're the same word. Sure.
Yeah, that was from the Song of Revision.
Well, I always sort of took that to mean that you don't need to seek out dull form. It's just kind of, if you go out into a high storm without seeking anything, it'll find you.
Mm-hmm. That does make sense. Because you don't have to worry about the requirements of finding the form. It will find you.
Is that what you guys think is the cost?
Yeah.
One must banish. One needs banish the cost.
That was my always thought. And this song is not very flattering towards dull form in the earlier sections.
No.
I mean, there could be a different meaning to brings you to blight other than just, yeah, you're gonna be an idiot, but
Yeah, they definitely don't think
it's
highly of it.
important to note that like dull form, they're not stupid. Like they
Yeah.
understand. They're just slow.
Okay, yeah. they're just
Yeah.
Because the member of the council, that was in
Yeah.
dull form
Yeah.
was arguably the wisest of them all.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
true.
Yes.
He just didn't talk a lot.
Know what that reminds me of? The Revenge.
Some
Yeah.
sense.
He's really empathetic when he's really dumb.
Well, wisdom and empathy are not the same thing.
Yeah. That
Nah, true, but
But whoever wrote this song did not have that point of view of dull form.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I can't imagine dull form being useful in any significant way. It's just it's a blank slate
Yeah.
without
that's exactly
being
it.
Yeah.
the blank of a parchment, right? It's just
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like it's the form without any specialization.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so going on to the forms of power.
And singers with forms of power are termed regals
Yes.
in the Odium's army, basically. Easy thing to forget. I think it's mentioned like once.
and so going over the forms of power of the regals, so all of them show up in either the song. Well, no, they show up in different songs. Never mind.
Yeah, they show up in a few. But a
We
lot.
I was gonna say Song of Secrets, but
Yeah, a lot of them are in the Song of Secrets, yeah.
we have Night form, which seems to draw some parallels with.
Moloch?
Oh, that's not the Future Sight one, is it?
Night form is. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
predicting
Night
what
Form's the
will be.
Future
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Draw some parallels with what Renarin is doing, seeing the future and things like that, which is interesting to me. It is also the forum that apparently foresaw or talks about the Everstorm,
Yeah, well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
which is also interesting. And then we have Decay form, which has the obvious and clear ability to, and I quote, destroy the souls of dreams.
Which is like, holy crap, what does that mean? But that is awesome.
Yeah.
It's like I think that's a poetic term of phrase,
Absolutely, but I'm excited.
and it's probably. This always reminded me of Nightblood, in that Nightblood destroys things like on multiple realms.
Yeah.
So it's like, but like it destroys the souls of things.
Yes. Also says,
Oh,
seek
yeah.
not its touch, nor beckon its screams.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, let's get some decay forms. Yeah. Sounds
Lovely.
Awesome. Yeah, lovely.
I wonder if when we get to see Decay's Pren in Shadesmar, if there'll be just some kind of screaming beasts that constantly yell at you.
Eee.
But the interesting bit to me is the last line in the Song of Secrets that talks about this. Hold dear to fears that fill your head, defy it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which to me reads like, well, if you want to avoid getting stuck with this form, hold on to your fear.
Yeah, because maybe you'll like lose your fear. Like that's pretty like odious. Like
That's
Yeah.
a pretty odium thing, right?
Yeah, it's
Giving-
you're
giving
not
your
gonna feel
emotions.
those fears. Yeah.
That could just be remember to be afraid of this form. And don't be fooled by like the people who maybe tell you that it's not scary. Like, does
Sure.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's boring, but it does.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's boring, yeah. But
Sometimes the boring answer is the right answer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And then the next form of power we have is smoke form, which is for hiding and slipping between men. I believe we see one of those in the scene where they snatch the king's ruby. Honor's drop.
I would say no, because that's
Really?
fused
Yeah, it's
using
abused.
abrasion.
Sure.
Yeah, those are different things.
Okay. You're right.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, guys, we haven't talked about the fuse, but the fuse kind of have like they kind of mimic radiant abilities, right? Like and those surges, and so they don't really have like forms like this.
It's
kind of confusing.
unclear.
It's really unclear.
I mean, they do seem to have forms because they do look different, right?
Yeah, it's just not clear
But it's not
how
forms
that works.
of power. It's
Right.
forms of like fused forms or forms of fused or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. But just wanted
Forms
to
of
say that.
superpower.
Forms of superpower. Yeah, because
Super forms.
what someone mentions it to Venley that was like, oh, Regals, they're powerful, but a step closer to fused. Far below the fused, though. Way below the fused.
They're a little bit arrogant, those.
Well, that's true.
And so that's smoke form, right? It's not
Well-
the thing we see in Oathbringer. It's
Mm.
a form for hiding.
It's really
It's
interesting how
stealth form, basically.
it's
Right.
really interesting in both the songs that smoke form is mentioned, the unmade are mentioned in both, which is unusual.
And
It is a little unusual, yeah.
it explicitly it explicitly compares it to surges.
Yeah, it really does. Well, I mean, clearly it's like gonna mimic things that are abrasion, right? Like pretty clearly type thing. I think that makes sense. But though crafted of gods, it was by unmade hand in Song of Histories, and
By
crafted
unmade
of gods,
touch.
this form we fear, by unmade touch, it's cursed to bear. Form from shadow, and death is near, it lies. I don't know why the unmade are being referenced here. I really don't.
Maybe it requires, like, it's closely associated to one of the unmade. It's basically like, if you enter smoke form, like, you are this unmade's shock troops. Like, you answer directly to them, and you do what they say. Whereas
to
other
me,
forms
it's-
are more generic.
To me, it sounded like you maybe don't bond with a void like with a regular void spren. You form a bond with a specific unmade.
I don't...
Not in the same way that Yelignar does.
Because
I mean, yeah.
I really don't think so. Because, like, forms are about, like, taking a sprint into your gem heart. An unmade is not going to fit.
Well, that's true, but it's just
What if the unmade
clearly something
splintered?
is important about the unmade
Yeah.
there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's specifically mentioned there twice. So, but I'm uncomfortable with that too, Ian.
But,
I
like,
don't really
for the
know.
record, isn't this one, like, the two
Well-
are, like, two stanzas are very obviously, like, the same stanza, just, like, tweaked a little.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that actually, because the
They're
song of
Well-
secrets, like I've noticed this a couple of times. The Song of Secrets seems a more truthful retelling of some of the more mundane songs, right? So in this example, you have the Song of Histories, which gives you kind of the pedestrian explanation of the smoke form, and then you have the Song of Secrets, which is a lot closer to, well, no, this is what really happens.
Like, we mean if you're singing to remember things, repetition's useful.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, it makes sense that they would mimic. Interesting that smoke form is also mentioned as it spies, so...
I would say, like, smoke form for hiding and slipping between men. Smoke form for hiding and slipping between men.
Yeah.
A form of power like human searches. A form of power like searches of Spren. Like, this is, like, very obviously, like, the same stanza, just slightly repurposed for a different song.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, like, it's not really mentioned twice.
Sure, but I feel like the unmade name drop is very much intentional and important somehow.
Yes, like it was important, so it was preserved for this like
Yeah.
reiteration. But it's not like they're circling back to this unmade point.
Yeah, okay.
So, I was wondering, the line formed from shadow, do you think it could be, like, the kind of reminded me with the unmade of the Midnight Mother and her Midnight
Yeah.
Essence? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's so hard to
It
say.
could fit with the Midnight Essences being kind of smoky. And when
Yeah,
you poke them, they
that's true.
bleed smoke.
That is really true. Connecting this stuff to like the 10 deaths. Why are there 10 of them and not 9? I don't know, but there's apparently still 10. I don't know. Like it's all not super clear.
It's like a punch card for deaths at Shadesmart.
Shade
get-
smart. Yes, that's right.
You get 9 deaths, then 1 is free.
That's right. An extra free sub. The 10th death is a Subway sub.
Alternatively, the 10th death is imaginary. Like the pancakes.
It's a tribute.
Oh, okay, like the pancakes, yes. And then we have Stormform. We know a lot about that.
Yeah.
It summons, for some reason, it summons the Everstorm, but was never used for millennia. Okay, great, cool.
Well-
I don't know. The specific summoning the Everstorm. Stormform could have been used.
Know what I
Yeah.
wonder? If the whole old by design, new but old by design, refers to Stormform previously just like being able to summon like a storm. And maybe it was something like the Everstorm, but like you drop that on the enemy army and that's it, and it dissipates and it's gone.
Oh, and maybe like Odium made a specific construct and allowed Stormform like the ability to do that. Like summon like this specific construct.
Well, maybe, or just in the way that if you got a bunch of storm forms, you control the winds, you control the atmosphere, and you build up a storm. Maybe it's a regular storm, right?
Sure.
You drop it on your enemies, it's disruptive, and then it goes away. But the Everstorm, the new component to the thing that is old by design, is that 1, it now circles the planet, 2, it doesn't go away, 3, it's invested to the hilt with Odium's investiture.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can kind of reconcile Stormform, existing before and doing stuff, and
Okay.
its
so
purpose now.
I don't think. I absolutely believe Stormform was in use, but
Yeah.
like not that concentrated hundreds of Stormform working together
Yeah,
to make
Yeah.
a big storm.
yeah.
Like, I don't think that happened because Eshni, like when she shows up, like creates a little storm in her hand.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I
like
think
tiny
that's like
cloud.
more of like a combative thing. But like eventually someone realized like, hey, if we get enough of these working together, we could create a big storm, and then maybe Odium could inhabit it and create a counter to the high storms.
You know,
But like they never had enough of them in one place to
Yeah.
put it
And-
into action.
Honestly, the old of design, for all we can know, could just mean Odium saw the high storm and was like, I want one of those for myself.
yeah, I think if you're designing something, it's a little
Yeah.
more than that. But
Yeah.
here's a fun line. Though its coming brings the gods their night. In the storm form. Oh, okay. Like, how would they know that if the Everstorm wasn't summoned? I don't know. I don't get it. Like that doesn't make any sense. How would they even know? Ah,
Yeah.
right. And so, the last form of power we know of is Envoy form, which Venli had, and gave you connection to
Yeah.
other things. So, that's all the ones we know of. I presume there's more.
Oh yeah, there's got to be more.
There's like hundreds of forms.
Oh, hey! There's something important that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about the rhythms and the reason why they're called singers. Hey, just probably mentioned that. But yeah, they sing to various rhythms, which is
Yes.
like a spiritual connection type thing.
They are.
I would not
definitely
call them
spiritual.
connection. They're
Well,
spiritual.
how would you call them then?
A spiritual ideal?
Yeah,
Like
it's-
connection is the wrong term for that. Because like connection means something specific in the Cosmere, and I was like, this isn't that.
They are. What they remind me of is the idea of, like, listening to the signatures of various investitures and being able to recognize them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that every manifestation of investiture has some kind of like a waveform, and I feel like Brandon has either referred to it as kind of like that, or has confirmed when somebody else, that's me, has referred to it in this way. And so if every kind of manifestation of investiture, or maybe just kinetic investiture, can be quote unquote heard,
Yeah.
then maybe the rhythms are like a specific manifestation of that, or something related to that. Like, that's how I imagine the rhythms, right?
Okay.
Just waveforms that have a different shape.
Kind of
Yeah,
like
so-
pulses. Yeah.
Yeah, so like we know that the best example of this is like allomancy and seeking. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
and we do have confirmation that like a skilled enough seeker could detect the rhythms, I believe. And so I think it's like everything vibrates, like in our world, everything vibrates at a certain frequency. Most of us like can't hear the frequency that car is vibrating at. So like
Sure.
what if like the rhythms are like the frequencies to like certain spiritual concepts, and they just can just like tap into it.
Maybe.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I'd certainly be interested in finding more about them, though.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there are, because this is one of my words of Brandon, that like there are other creatures in the Cosmere that interact with the rhythms, though not necessarily in the same way that the singers do. So like,
Oh, you
these
know
are
what'd be
a
cool?
Cosmere-wide phenomenon.
So for something like anger, the spiritual ideal of anger has a certain rhythm, and the
Mhm.
singers happen to be able to hear that and
Well, attuned to it, yeah.
attune
Yeah.
to it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, it's like they do hear the rhythms. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
like
yeah,
they
they do.
feel them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What'd be
And
cool
then-
is, you know how the Rhythmist was originally supposed to be Cosmere,
Yeah.
and the Shadow Blazes were supposed to be spiritual beings?
Yep.
It'd be really cool if we get to see spiritual beings, maybe similar to the Shadow Blazes. But obviously not, right? And then
Yeah.
we get to see them interact with stuff in the spiritual realm, and maybe even those rhythms.
That's true. That's a very good point. And Brennan has said that there are spiritual entities, like primarily spiritual entities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
blows my mind. Well,
Yeah,
shards,
it is
but
crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
yeah,
like
guess
I
that's true.
like not like shards. Like shards transcend the realms. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
like specific like humans only for the spiritual realm.
It is crazy to think about
Crazy.
or like Spren, but
in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the rhythms. Some other fun factoids that are very easy to miss, but there are some humans who interbreeded with singers long ago.
There are hybrids. We don't
Yeah.
know how the hybridization happened.
Well, there was a recent quote that was asking how could those two species intermingle, and it basically said like Aiden Alcia wanted it to.
Oh yeah, that's
basically.
true. That's true.
Right.
I forgot
Right.
about that.
Right? Like,
Mhm.
so because there's like this similar design, you can't have that.
Okay.
Because otherwise, that's just really weird.
yeah, normally you have, normally you would expect difficulties
Yeah.
mating with somebody
Yes.
from not your species, which is
Yeah. Don't do that, kids.
well, I mean, so it usually comes up in sci-fi, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You have human and a humanoid, but like the fact that they're completely incompatible, even if their bits appear to be compatible.
Right.
Just DNA doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But in the
this is
Cosmere,
fantasy.
but
in
in
the
well, not only is it fantasy, it is fantasy where Adonasium was like, I want people to be able to have fun regardless of the race they belong to.
Okay, but
I don't know if that was his intent, but
like
100%.
in most like fantasy universes, like human special power is they get to breed with everything. That's
true.
why you get
That
half
is
orcs and half elves
as that is certainly
and half dwarves, but you don't have like a half elf and a half dwarf. Like
Right, it's always
That just
half
doesn't
human,
happen.
half something else.
yeah. Also humanistic. And the two groups that were
ethnicities.
ethnicities that were made from the interbreeding of the two species are Herdazians and Horn-Eaters.
Yes.
With the
And-
Herdazian,
Yeah.
with the
And the-
Herdazians, you may have noticed that their nails are practically made of rock,
Yeah.
which is probably an inheritance from the Carapace,
Yes.
from the Singer side of things, and the Horn-Eaters, outside of being just massive, have they have extra teeth in the back,
Yeah.
and
They
they're
have an
stronger.
extra set of molars,
Yeah.
stronger jaws, and red hair.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the Veden red hair is all just from the Horn-Eaters, which is from the Singers. So
Yeah.
Shallan, partially Singer.
One
Very,
quarter.
very distally. Very distally.
25% confirmed Singer.
Oh, that
It
was-
becomes a plot point that she is a distant cousin of Venli.
Right.
God, no. Let's not do that, please.
That's why her father was so upset when he saw her drawn the parshman. Like,
why.
how to keep
No.
them separated.
Little did we know.
Every
Her-
radiant needs to be related to the Colens.
every radiant. Mulata secretly related to the
A Kalin, yeah.
Yeah.
No, little known secret, but Shallan used to Shallan's first steps into the arts were into music and singing, and then her parents didn't like that, and so she went into the visual arts.
That's right. That's right. None of that's true. But what else do we want to talk about? There is an easy thing to forget with that there being listeners who were not Stormform at the end.
Yes.
Yes.
End of Words of Radiance. Eshonai had her soldiers who had adopted or accepted Stormform. She had them round up all the other listeners who had refused Stormform
Mm-hmm.
under the pretense that, well, they don't want to fight, that's fine, it's their choice, we're just going to keep them there so they don't get in the way. When, in fact, what happened was they escaped.
Yep.
Because they wisely assumed that Eshonai was going to have him killed off, which she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Accurate.
Right. And so they are now out there somewhere. They may have died during the clash of the High Storm and the Everstorm.
Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely because, as we all know, if you don't die on screen, you're not really dead. Any contrary
Unless
evidence...
your name is Eshonai.
Unless your name
Look,
is
we saw our corpse later. It's fine. Saw our corpse later.
We'll get to see the funeral pyre for those, right?
Yeah.
So they might be out there. Eshonai's mother is in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually really hoping that we're gonna get to
Yes.
see her again sometime in the
With
future,
Venli,
maybe even in the
yeah.
next book. Next book is Eshonai's flashbacks. There's probably gonna be a strong focus on Venli. Maybe Venli is gonna find their mother again. That's gonna be so
Maybe.
cool.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that at the Eshonai Venli podcast, and I very much want to see that happen
Yes.
because her mother's so interesting. It's so
Oh, yeah.
weird.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's super weird, and it would just suck if she was just dead.
How hard do you think she's gonna slap Venli for what she did?
Oh.
not
Will she
slap
remember
at
it?
all. Like
She's gonna knock her head off.
How aware do you
doesn't
think
she
her
have,
mother
like,
will be?
Parshendi Alzheimer's?
Yeah, basically.
yes, she
Like,
does.
Yeah.
I think the scumbaggery Venli did transcends
I think
Alzheimer's.
Venli is going to see her mother, and her mother's going to be like, "Where's your sister?"
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen.
Every time.
She keeps mistaking the two of them, right? She talks to Eshonai, she thinks she's talking to Venli.
Rip.
Now she talks to Venli, thinks it's Eshonai.
Rip.
Yep.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Their mom is just a troll.
Yeah, but we definitely got to see those on screen.
Yes.
And then,
Like, I thought that was going to be part of Rlain's arc for Oathbringer, but then
Finding them?
finding them, but then they are not mentioned at all, and then Rlain has a very, very small role in Oathbringer.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we'll definitely, just like when Gaz disappeared, saw him in the next book. I think we're definitely gonna see Rlain in the next book.
Yeah.
And Peter has
Hopefully-
come that, like,
Oh, I was gonna say, hopefully I want to see him interact with Venli.
and Peter has said that Rlain's absence was noted and is intentional.
Yeah.
So it's not like Brennan just dropped the ball and forgot. Like,
Yeah.
he's purposefully did not really include Rlain much.
Yep.
Sure. So we're
Coming
gonna have
back
to trust that it's a decision he had consciously made. We'll deal with it later.
Though his chapter in part 2 was heartbreaking. Just
Yeah.
like, because like he's an outsider
Yeah.
in Bridge 4.
It is
Yeah.
a chapter I hear a lot of immigrants are very fond
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
including this one.
Definitely like that. Hey.
And so like I do think he's going to end up becoming the first Squire singer.
I can
Venli
believe
is the
that.
first Surgebinder singer, but I think Rlain is going to be a Squire of Kaladin.
Unless Rlain's gonna go off and do other things and find those other listeners and not be near Kaladin, which is possible as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to be
I think
careful.
both are super possible. If he's near Kaladin, I completely agree. But he might be doing something else.
We need to be careful making everybody a Surge Binder.
Well, you gotta fight.
Well, like that's
There's
the Windrunner thing, making everyone a Surgebinder.
yeah.
Yeah.
First, you
And
go and save a bunch of people, and then you make them squires.
You just can't make Rlain a squire until Venli said the oath. So
Yeah.
next book you
Yeah.
can totally do that.
And Windrunners are also all about protecting the helpless, so going after the children and elderly could be a really good jumping off point for saying that
Yeah.
second ideal.
Yeah, it's just how's that gonna fit in with the plot? What even is gonna be the plot of that next book? I don't even
We
know.
I
have-
mean, plot is
But,
a
like-
year into the future, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like this is definitely going to be a singer focused book.
Yeah.
What with like the flashbacks being Eshonai and it
Yeah.
the modern day focusing on Venli, like
Yeah. Yep.
it just makes sense.
looking forward.
Yeah.
I am.
So we didn't talk about
The
John Singer's being prevented from being Radiant in the past.
Yeah,
I don't really care about that though.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned it on Word of Random podcast. I think it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, it'll come
So
up.
like I have actually I don't remember what I said, so perhaps this is exactly what I said on the podcast that something prevented them.
Yeah,
That could be
you
as
said
simple as like cultural taboos
Oh, yeah.
prevented them.
this. I think you did say
Yeah.
that,
Okay. Okay.
I actually remember that, so yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to end things up with asking the big question. Really,
42.
Stormlight is less about a big fight between Odium and, Radiance and stuff. It's really about what are we gonna do with the humans versus the singers, and Oathbringer really sets that up really hard with what the Recreants was about, right? In addition to other things, of course. But how are these two species going to coexist? And I think that's really the core of everything, because even if Odium wasn't there, there would still be conflict.
Well-
They don't have to. No, I'm not talking about genocide. Damn it, Grace.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know that word. You were thinking exactly that. I know you. There are 2 other planets. We can send people, like, people can board the Eurythero spaceship, and
No, it's not a spaceship. For the record, not a spaceship.
one of these days. And they can fly off to, okay, maybe Ashen and Braze are not ideal.
They're not
at the
good
moment.
options
Yeah,
at
no.
all.
Just to be clear, that's a suggestion like, hey, all those Native Americans, let's just ship them somewhere else or something. Or vice versa. Like, it's not great for one group involved here, right?
No. It's a little
I
better for the
don't
humans,
think.
though. No, because the humans are not native.
Well,
There are, like, they are living, like, they have evolved, or they were designed to live in a place like Shinovar,
But-
with soil.
As far as all of the human main characters are concerned, it's their home.
right.
Yeah, okay,
They're
you're
not going to be happy leaving.
No, you're right. You're right.
It
I'm
doesn't
dumb.
matter that, like, my ancestors came from England. Like, I'm American. Like, I'm
Right,
not English.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. No,
we
okay.
survived on these rocks well enough, it's fine,
Yeah.
Yeah. My brain caught up with me. Okay, never mind.
So,
But- I think they have to come to terms with the fact that they're more similar than they are different.
Yeah.
Because, like, and Kaladin got a glimpse of that, where, like, he had a breakdown because it's like, that group of singers is my people, but Bridge 4 is my people. Like,
right,
how's-
exactly.
like, but they're fighting each other
yeah.
because, like we've said, the Alethi singers are Alethi, like the Azish singers are Azish. Once, like, both sides realize that, like, they share a culture, like,
And I
Yeah.
think if you can somehow introduce a common enemy into the mix, that would definitely help things.
which the fused could be that common enemy.
Yeah.
Because, like, the fused don't care about the
Yeah.
modern day singers. They just want
That's true, they
revenge.
I
They
was
want to destroy all the humans. And
They
don't care what
steal
the-
singers' bodies in order to come back. Like,
Yeah.
that's not okay.
yes. I was also thinking of the Pooley's grandfather's story, but we know very, very little about that, and that is super speculative on what that is
Oh,
exactly going to
okay.
be.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like that story. I don't think it's relevant.
I don't think.
I really don't want it to be as simple as the regular singers and the humans just need to work together to fight Odium, and then they'll fight them, and then everything will be great.
I don't think it'll be
don't
that
want that to be.
simple.
I really don't want it to be that simple.
Yeah.
That's kind of the
I
obvious
think,
one,
like,
right?
that's, like, they're going to band together to, like, get rid of the fused.
Yes.
But, like, then they have to deal with, like, the fact that, like, we've been fighting, like, humans screwed over the singers. Like, that has to be, what's the word? Reparations have to be made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to be difficult. It will be difficult. Clearly it will. Like, Kaladin's like, yeah, what are we going to do about this? We're going to be more pragmatic. I don't know what we're actually going to do.
Even if they do end up joining forces, it's not going to be all of a sudden,
that's
we're
true.
buddies working together. Woohoo. It's going to be more of a,
Yeah.
well, I guess we'll have to work with you to defeat Odium, and then as soon as he's gone, like, we're going to have to.
And then we're going to reclaim our homeland.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Welcome
like,
to the
it
Tower
will be
2.0.
a gradual process. Like, they'll eventually, like, it will be hard, but, like, eventually they will come together. But, like, they'll never forget.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. This is the cool thing is that this is really close to home with so many things. Like, yes. The answer is integration, but that's a hard process. Realistically, right? That's a hard
Yep.
process. So, Any last thoughts?
I have one.
Yeah.
Humans are really common in the Cosmere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're on a lot of planets.
Mm-hmm.
The only non-humans we really know about are the Shodel and the dragons of Yolen, the the singers of Roshar, and then the Amiens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
True.
Why didn't every planet get its own variation of humans?
I mean,
Or-
most
Yeah.
did.
Or like every variant of singers, you mean?
Well, like, singers are a variant of humanoid form.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, like, they're Rosharan humans, basically.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like, why didn't, like, Nalthis get its own brand of humanoids, and Taldane get its own brand of humanoids? Like, why did humans go everywhere? Except for...
Maybe a lot of shards are human, and so
A lot of the
that's
shards
fine.
But a
are
lot of the
definitely human.
humans were there before
Yeah,
the shards.
true,
So, like,
true.
that doesn't make sense
Oh,
as an
yeah.
argument.
Edenausian was a
Some
human.
migrated.
Easy.
But then why create the Parshendi? Just, I'm bored
Uh,
of humans, I'm going to do a different thing here.
He was feeling artistic on that Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, this deep lore of Aiden Elsium, very tough.
I mean, you might be getting into just the writing reason. Like we
True.
Yeah.
read
Yes.
stories about humans,
Yeah.
That is a good
because it's easy. And so,
and
Aiden
it's
Elsium,
of-
because reasons needed to do this. So,
Yeah.
as a writer, you can.
It's like Aaron Shadesmar, probably.
Yeah.
could be, or it could be just kind of a default. Hey, that's just what people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely cool to explore other flavors of. No, that's a terrible word. Other variants.
I love
of
that word
humanoids.
for, like, random things, though. Like, I talk
Flavors
about
of Investure.
flavors of Investure all the
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Well, maybe flavors of humans is not.
Yeah, maybe not that one.
Eh,
Welcome to
Cannibalism.
CondraCast.
Okay. That's
Any
my
other
only
thoughts?
question.
I was looking at the words of Brandon. There's nothing really exciting that I feel like
There's
we need
not.
to talk about there.
All right.
Any for you, Grace?
I think I'm good.
Okay. So you know what time it is, guys? It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character? Ben didn't send us any, and Grace didn't make any. So
Dishonor.
I know. Well, we
Dishonor
kind of
on
forgot
you.
about this. just
Dishonor on
before
your
we-
chul.
Hey,
We
I,
just completely forgot about this ahead of time.
I was the one
so-
who reminded you about it.
You did. You totally did, and you've done so many of them. So
Slightly less
Ian
dishonor.
has one, and I have one. Do you want to go first, Ian?
Sure.
Great.
Okay. So, clue number 1. This character is blind.
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 Car.
No.
Would you count him as blind? Would you
Yes.
count an Inquisitor as blind? Okay, great.
Yes.
Cool. Just
Okay.
for the
Because
record.
it's not technically sight.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's in the name, though.
Yeah. But you're not using eyeballs. You don't have those things.
Marsh.
No.
Yeah.
Go over the Inquisitors.
Random female Inquisitor that Vin fought in the final battle of Hero of Ages.
You already gave a clue. I'm not going to respond to that.
Okay.
Inquisitor number 7.
Is that your guess?
Would you count
No, I'm
shards
thinking-
as blind?
No comment. 'Cause you already haven't had a clue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like this is gonna be some beggar.
Oh
The-
yeah, that's true.
Oh, Hoyd.
No.
Damn it.
Hoyd can see.
He is spiritually blind.
True.
Self-described.
that is a
Self-described.
very good point. And if I remembered that, I totally would use that in a thing. But it is not.
I think we need another clue because
Okay.
we're getting very into what is blindness.
So this
Are they
character,
legally blind or actually blind?
Yeah.
this character is a teacher.
What?
Maybe I made this too hard.
Maybe.
Maybe you should be the one blinded.
I'm like half
I need
blind
another
already.
clue. I have
Okay.
teacher. Wait. Gemmel?
No,
Is he
I'm pretty sure
blind?
Gemmel could see.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of teachers.
Right?
Okay.
Same.
Yeah.
You know?
No, this is gonna be some dumb. He's
that might not
he's
be their
a real teacher.
profession. They are someone who taught someone else.
Oh, is this like was there like some blind artist who like inspired Shalon or something? Am I completely misremembering this?
Um,
I feel like there was some like blind artist on Roshar or something.
Are you thinking of Dondos the Oil Sworn?
No. It's not.
Okay,
No.
then I'm using that as my guess.
it is not Dandos the Oilsworn.
Okay.
Though that is a good guess.
Yeah, because I don't think he was blind.
Oh no.
Okay. Do you want another clue, Grace?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This character was a famous painter.
Ah!
Well,
I'm
thank
like
you.
100% like remember reading this. It's like so what was the name of that? So was Dandos the Oilsworn the one who Shalon told Yasna that she read his books and that's how she became a better painter?
Yeah.
Well, Capstall, but yes.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
okay.
He's also the one who did the Shalash painting that we see.
Shalash
Yeah.
and Ishar.
I just don't know who that person is. Like, I may have a vague recollection of a blind painter being mentioned somewhere, but there's like a 0% chance I can get the name right.
If you get a good description of them, of who they are, and why they are relevant, then I will accept.
I don't know.
Do you want another clue?
Yeah, give us another clue.
Yeah.
This
What are we
character
up
is
to, 4?
Sellish.
Oh, Sellish? Oh, it's the blind painter that Shay learned to paint from.
Hey, Ainden. No, he's not blind. I'm an idiot.
No, wait,
Grace is correct.
yeah, what's his name?
Han Shuzen.
Han Shuzan.
Oh,
we got
alright.
so stuck on Roshar.
Yeah, you
For
did.
sure.
We do.
Statistically speaking.
It is
Statistically
time.
speaking.
the
Okay,
like
so clue number 5 was this character hates an empire.
Okay.
Because like,
Oh, okay. Yeah. In Rose Empire,
I was getting my painting teachers mixed up with Roshar and Cell, I guess.
Look, there's a lot of scholars and stuff there. So on
Freaking
Roshar.
nerds, man.
All right, now I have one.
okay.
All right. God, I don't know how much I like the one that I've crafted. This character is joyful.
Is it Noerden, the
No,
obligator?
happy obligator. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Some random joy
guess.
spren that appears on Roshar.
No.
No. Where are you taking that as my guess?
God, there are like no happy people in the Cosmere.
No.
Syl.
No.
Wait,
This character.
okay.
This character hunted lurgs.
Tien.
Tien.
Yeah.
Get wrecked.
Yeah, I know.
Weird.
There
You didn't
were
go
not.
for-
I was trying to craft some, cause what I was going for is that I always guess Tien, and so I wanted to make a Tien one. It was actually the answer. The other clues are: this character can't stand the sight of blood. This character is dead, and this character has a brother.
I would have put Lurgs at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's a pretty distinctive. Like that's how we find out about Lurgs.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I'm not a pro at making these.
Generally, you go from the least to the most specific. Although, honestly, if you had started with died, we probably would have guessed Tien.
Yeah, of
As
course,
our go-to
of course,
dead
exactly.
person.
You can't do that one first. Exactly. Because that's what I do. Oh, someone dead at the end. Alright, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Send your Who's That Cosmere characters to whosthatcosmerecharacter at gmail.com. And I'll actually ask Ben to check it for me for the next time we record. Great. Make sure you follow us on 17shard.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Twitter's better though if you actually want to see what we post, unlike Facebook, which is terrible. But whatever works. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can follow us on SoundCloud. We're on iTunes. You can subscribe to our RSS feed. You can follow, and do all the things. You can rate us on iTunes too. Leave us a review. And we will see you next time.
Come chat with us on the Discord.
Come chat with us on the Discord.
Tell us how we're wrong.
That's right.
Or not.
Tell us what you think of random listener songs that are very vague. Do tell. Mm-hmm. And we'll see
I was
you
gonna
guys
make
next- Yeah. Yes.
I was gonna ruin the outro. Is what I was gonna do.
No, you're not going to ruin the outro. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
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 Call.